to thank you, Gabriel, for hosting me. Thank you, all participants on the different platforms. In the last 1 month, we were in 1 month and a half. We toured 3 districts. Kamwenge, after that, we went to Singiro. After that, we went to Chegegwa. We just had a break, and in the next 1 week, we're going to set off for the east. We will be touring the 2 districts in the east, Kapchoro and Busia, and then from there we'll get to central region, Uganda region. We'll be doing the Mukono and the Wakiso. And we'll continue like that, depending on the resources that we have. We keep on moving whenever we have resources, and we intend to keep doing that until we cover the whole country.
General, when you formed or at least when you announced that you were, breaking away from the FDC, and I think at that time you called it the new formation or something of the sort, I was still active in the media and I attended that session. And something that you talked about that you have mentioned right now is in relation to resources, raising resources to be able to carry out your activities. And it seems like that has been a common theme, every time you've spoken about what you're doing as the Alliance. Doesn't seem like you're making much headway on raising the resources you need in order for the Alliance to do what it needs to do. Is that something people should be worried about, especially those that believe in what the Alliance is doing?
Resources have always been the biggest impediment in the rolling out of our programs. And that's why we keep talking about it, but it never stops us from moving whenever we raise whatever amount we're able to raise. That's why we keep communicating to Ugandans, basically. As far as I'm concerned, and as we keep discussing in ANT, we really need to understand that political parties are the core of our existence when we're on this side of life. Because when anything goes right in a country, it's because of management of politics. If anything goes wrong, most times it's because of bad governance. And the vehicles of governance are political parties. So when there's anything that is going wrong in a country and you want to put it right, you have to put right the source. Sources are always those who are in power or those who are prepared to go in power. And vehicles are the parties are the vehicles of governance. We keep talking about it so that at some point the consciousness of the population can, rise higher. And once they get to understand that, then they can step in. Those who support different parties can support him to support them. Because I know it is not that it's because people don't have money. It's because they don't relate to the political processes. But when it comes to other areas of life, people, associate, for example, with the places where they go to worship, and they willingly give money to churches, to mosques. When they have social obligations for friends, relatives, they do support weddings, they support birthday parties. If someone unfortunately passes, people congregate and they raise money for burials. Politics is still a problem. I know in the 60s, the traditional parties at independence, they used to get support from their membership. But because of the mess that we've been going through after the military regime of Idi Amin and then the Obote II and then NRM came in, the consciousness simply went down. And unfortunately, I think currently most people expect to get money from parties because I think they see the practice of the movement. And it's tough for those of us who are focused on change. So we keep doing whatever we can within the means that we do get, but also keep raising this issue so that the consciousness of the public can be raised. And in a sense, another issue that we try to keep talking about is the vulnerability of countries. Because if the population does not step in to support the political organizations, which are the vehicles of governance, if parties don't have leaders who are really very disciplined in the current global environment, where you find all nature of money floating all over the world. I mean, like us in NT, if we had wanted any form of money without caring about sources, I know for sure that we'll be having money. But the problem is that we would end up in a very, compromised situation as a party. So if you're a party and because of vulnerability and you don't have disciplined leaders, and they fall prey to monies which are floating all over the world, what do you do when you get into power? Because most of the monies have got strings attached. The population seems not to understand that. So to me, the only way we can influence our future, but also be sure and secure about how we will get to where we want to go. People must really understand what this means. I've seen countries where their governments controlled by big corporations. So if you find the governance vehicle, in our case, it will be parties and a number of other African countries, and they find that the party has been compromised because of desperation, wanting resources, and they go and get money from any place. And then the controlling force, most of them are always outside. They have interest to advance. So you find that there are, even 2, 3, 4 parties can get into power one after another. But if all of them are not independent of sponsors who push them to do what is in their interest rather than the interest of the country, then you find a problem. So we'll keep talking about it. We keep trying to do all things that are necessary. Of course, the capacity we have is to keep resisting getting monies that would cause the party itself to be compromised, and in the event that it is in power, to compromise the national interest. That one we will do. Even if it means continuing building on the slow pace that we are at, we'll continue doing that. Because at the end of the day, what is the whole purpose of wanting to get into power, at least for us who are very driven, is to change the nature of politics, transform this country. How will you transform it if there are global forces that want to have their own agenda established? And then you find the people who go in there, their hands are tied. People don't seem to understand these things. You can get money from drug pins, they're all over the world, and they want to make a country a transit point, or to do all nature of things. There are people involved in human trafficking. There are people involved in all nature of things. You go in that direction and you know that the future of a country can really be compromised. The population needs to understand that. So we'll keep talking about it.
All right. Well, General, that would have been an excellent place for me to segue into, a party that has been thrown into some kind of turmoil because of money. But if we go that direction right now, we won't be able to come back. So if we could just finish on the progress that, the Alliance for National Transformation is making. And I'd just like to draw to, something that I saw in the media just a few days ago, an article written by famous columnist Munini Mulera, and he speaks about ANT, likens it to Africa's volcanoes, particularly, the Ibirunga, volcanic mountains, some kind of sleeping giants. And in this case, he speaks about the media not giving the ANT the attention the party should be getting. And really talking about ANT as this force that we should look at, and that's bringing value-driven politics and what have you. What's your view on this article and the reference of to ANT and some kind of insinuation that the media and other actors have been unfair to the party and not really covered it and portrayed it for what it is?
Yeah, Dr. Munini is one of, I think he's in a class of his own. One is a medical doctor. But when you follow what he writes consistently, you can see a person who, in spite of being a doctor and he's out there, the care he has for his country, the participation he has been having in the liberation struggles, is someone who is value-driven in his life, and also in the relationships that he creates around him in all areas. So the piece he wrote was a very good analysis of our local situation here. I would really hope that pieces of that nature would influence the thinking all around, mostly for people who want to see positive change in this country. So we keep running around and different actors in different areas. You know, the nature of our politics, because we are looking at how to change a culture, but simultaneously building capabilities to change a regime, because you cannot change the culture unless you're in control most times. When you're in control, it is easier. Now, most people are used to different nature of politics. I have noticed this is not only in politics. You know, there's a tendency, even in warfare, many generals fight past wars. Most generals who fight past wars fail. But there are those who, after a war, for example, after Second World War, they'll be preparing for a war of a different nature. And those who focus on and look at the nature of a war that would be fought and prepare for the war of the future rather than of the past, most times are the ones who are going to influence the war situation and end up in victory. Now, in Uganda, our politics, what we are used to, is what we've seen in the last 60 years. And it has shaped thinking of our population. So when you are doing things to shape the future, many people are not looking at where we should be and the nature of politics we should play, where we are heading. They are used to a nature of politics where we have been, but it has been the cause of our problems. And Einstein said that to do the same thing, the same way, over and over, and expect different results is problematic. I don't want to use the word used, you know? And that's what we are dealing with. People want us to play politics that they are used to. And yet, if we were to compromise, just simply to follow what people are used to, we would lose direction. So we are charting a way for a new nature of politics. And we know that's the right way to go. And we'll keep at it consistently until we succeed. Now, once we succeed, then people will start getting used to that new nature of politics. And maybe a generation down the road, if it will have exhausted itself, and maybe there would be need to change, then those who are able to see things different from what they are used to would start charting a new way forward at that point in time. Currently, what we are doing, trying to build an organization with value-driven leaders, to build the necessary infrastructure, to build the necessary preparation for a party. One, to build capability to take out the regime, but also two, to use power responsibly, to start rebuilding or putting in place a foundation on the basis of which we can have good governance, on which we can have equality before the law, on which we can have justice and fairness and transparent management of national resources. That's what people desire to have. But clearly they don't seem to understand how to get there. There is no way any group is going to change the nature of politics and therefore build a new foundation on the basis of which there can be good governance. Unless that group is composed largely in the majority, 60–70% of the leaders in that group who are what they want to do. I mean, everybody can only give what they have. What perturbs me, it is something which is so simple, and yet which seems to be problematic in people appreciating it. Because if any of us, I have to keep repeating this over and over, we won't get tired of repeating ourselves. If you get a group where out of 10 leaders, 7 are corrupt, how on earth would they be able to get rid of corruption, for example, which is so deeply entrenched? Yet the population desire to see a new future where there's zero tolerance to corruption. How can this formula not be understood? That for you, for example, to have a future where there will be zero tolerance to corruption, you must work to build a team where 7 out of 10 zero tolerant corruption. I don't know how to simplify it beyond that.
General, it may be hard to simplify. However, I'm sure you've come across this, that many people, whereas that's the desired position, get frustrated and say, probably this is not something we're going to be able to see in our lifetime. And therefore, abandon that route and seem to jump onto the route that is working. And, and I'm sure these are arguments that you find when you go out on the field, try to build these structures. How do you counter these arguments? Because like you say, this is a slow, painful process that you seem to be journeying on.
I mean, it's like if you are going to build a skyscraper, say you are going to build a 20-floor building, you have to know that you must build a strong foundation that will bear the weight of the 20 floors. Even if you don't have adequate resources to build it at a go, you are only going to build only 5 floors initially. But if you have any intention of building 20, the foundation must have the capacity to bear the weight of the 20, even when you start with only 5. Then you can add on once you get more resources. But if you work in a hurry and you build a foundation which can carry only 2 floors, and because you have got money, you now build 10, it will come down. That structure will come down. So we have no intention of being diverted by what we hear. We have got all the resilience and the focus of mind and the discipline to keep applying effort on what we believe works until it works and it becomes therefore self-evident. And then even people who are naysayers will now get to understand because they will have seen. So that's the nature of humanity. There are people who can only believe only when they see. There's nothing we're going to do about that.
General, speaking of not being diverted by what you hear, what you see, and what's thrown at you, a couple of days ago, there is a document that showed up on social media, a document that is attributed to you at a time when Uganda was undergoing an election. And what is purported in that document is that you are communicating that if a certain presidential candidate won, you at the time you were army commander, had a plan of how, that would be reversed by your troops going in a certain direction. And again, this is something that has, appeared out there. And, it's only right that we give you an opportunity to speak about it.
It's a fake document. The person who sent it out doesn't even know how I signed. At least if they had tried to forge my signature, it would have been understandable. It is like completely someone, for example, if you wrote your name is Mugisha, and then someone writes Muntu. The signature in that document is completely unrelated even to my own signature. But even if he had managed to forge my signature, the document is fake. I've never signed any such document. Actually, it's only that it is not easy to check archives. If one wanted to know my thinking then, because I was interviewed in '96 by a newspaper. I think it was the Monitor, and I gave my views on that. I've always believed that once a person has been trusted by the population and he or she is elected, the army needs to go behind that person. That's my belief.
Is that a view that you still hold today? And is it something that you see as feasible in the state we find ourselves as a country?
We operate in a very complex environment. That's why I keep working, all the effort that I apply to have people who can build and establish that kind of culture so that it becomes possible to practice it. Right now, it is problematic. The mindsets are, contrary to what that belief is. But we have to keep working until we change that. There are so many complexities. It's not only that. I mean, even living power itself has been a problem for the last 61 years. That's why we have had so many changes, and yet we don't have a change in the political culture. It's hard work. It has to be done. It can't just happen by itself.
All right, General. Everybody that's joining us for this, Ask Mugisha Muntu session, I'd like to let you know that there will be an opportunity for you to ask the General questions. And so if you have any question, regardless of what platform you're following on, just go ahead and type that question. We have teams that are monitoring all platforms that will be able to ensure that we're able to see those questions and we can put the questions to the General. For now, I'd like to segue to something else. I did refer to it earlier on. The party that you came from, the Forum for Democratic Change, and some of the chaos that they've been flung into very recently. And I'd like to just, say quote a few things from you. One, time will reveal the real moles. Then at a presidential debate, you did say to Patrick Amuriat Toboy, who is now the leader of that party, you say the people causing contradictions within the party are behind you, Patrick. And something else that you said is, you can be in the same vehicle and still have contradictions. Yeah. I am at the verge of calling you a prophet because these three things seem to be playing out. But let's hear your view on what's happening in the FDC and, whether from where you stand, these could have been avoided.
On the issue of, I would understand at that time when Patrick standing on the platform of defiance, and I was standing on the platform of party organization, grassroots based. Those were two clear positions which differentiated us. I would understand when he would be campaigning in regard to that. What perturbed me is when he tried to position himself as someone who would bring unity. I mean, I thought it was a little bit too much, because I would like to believe that he knew that the group which was behind him are the ones who started right from the time when I won in 2012. When I won that election in 2012, much as actually Honor Renanda is the one whom I had competed with, he conceded defeat in Nambole. But within a week, his chairperson raised a petition alleging that we had cheated that election and put there 6 points. So within 1 week, we started, in a state of contradictions that could have completely destabilized the party. But of course, we believe in transparent internal process of a party. So the first thing I did was talk to the chairperson and say, let's set up a committee. And we set up a committee of 6 people, three from each side. When Amananda put there 3, we put there 3. And they went through the 6 points which had been raised. And there was consensus. There wasn't even one person who disagreed with the findings of all the 6. They all agreed on all the 6 points. None remained standing. All of them were resolved. And then at that point, another issue was raised, which hadn't been raised initially. The question was, now, am I going to lead the party for 3 years, complete the term for Dr. Chizabesji, or was it 5 years, which had potential to cause instability? So I asked the administration to go and check out all the records in the process. Fortunately enough, by God's grace, we got the document which the Electoral Commission had issued when we presented our candidate. And we thought it was clear that it was 5 years. So that was resolved immediately at that point. Within a month, when we had the National Council, a few months after I was in office, the Treasurer General and the Deputy Treasurer General resigned. So we replaced them. Now, unfortunately, this time what happened, because when I competed with Dr. Chizabesji in 2009 and 2010, Every time we would compete, I would be competing on the platform of party organization, grassroots up, and he would be competing on defiance. Every time they would win twice, I would go meet with my campaign team, dissolve it, and tell them now we must continue with party building depending on what the National Executive Committee decides, because we would participate in the National Executive Committee to chart the direction of that 5-year tour of the president would have won. Because my understanding is that the delegates would have put trust in that president and the platform on the basis of which they would have campaigned. So fortunately for Dr. Chiza Besigye, he had no instability ever, because we would fold our campaign team and follow what the party would decide. Unfortunately, in my case, nothing like that happened. They put up a petition. I have already indicated that by Waramaya Orang. Even when the 6 issues were resolved and the one of years was resolved, the defiance group continued active. So we had contradictions for 5 years, quite intense. But fortunately for us as a party, we had the skills to manage the contradictions internally so that they never got onto the radar of the public. That's why in 2017, people got surprised when, after I lost, when we launched the national tour to find out how we could now move forward. And when we exit, people didn't know the magnitude of, or the intensity of the internal contradictions we had, because they had never spilled out in public on a large scale, except in a few times, like when I appointed the law, there was a contradiction when we were electing the Yala people, but they would be contained immediately. So when Honorable Boy said he was coming in to resolve internal contradictions, I just simply could not take that, because I thought it was being, maybe to use a simpler word, being unfair, because he knew that the group which was behind him are the ones who had been having a parallel infrastructure, literally, in the party. The good thing, though, 2017, what 2017 did, where we failed to discuss and resolve that matter through building a consensus internally, because to me, my belief, and that's what I've been advising, given the current situation they are in, because if you cannot resolve contradictions through discussions, through dialogue, through building a compromise, then the delegates are the ones who need to determine. Now, fortunately for them, we really had a clear, transparent process, electoral process, which we had. For me, when I was there, when we competed with Dr. Chiza Besigye, it was a transparent process. That's how we could manage to come from outside of the party, where he had gone to build around defiance. And when it became an electoral election, he came and he won. If we had wanted to run or manipulate the electoral process, there's no way how Dr. Chiza Besigye would have won that election when I was the party president. It simply wouldn't have been possible. 2017, we competed again on the 2 platforms, defiance and party organization, grassroots up. And Honorable Oboy won. So I think that was the good thing in regard to party stability. He won. I considered defeat. 1 week after that, I went and handed over power. One thing which possibly the public doesn't know, and unfortunately, when some of the senior leaders never understood that we really had goodwill for the party, even when we did an exit. If we are people who were, destructive, or people who were agents, as many were alleging, one, we would have used tactics to destabilize the party. Completely different from exiting. Because if your intention is to destabilize the party, then we wouldn't have exit. 2015, we would have organized to cheat Dr. Chiza Besigye. They would have complained, we would have held on, and you go into that ping pong until they come down, because we had the control. And in the case, if we were agents, then you'd have the state backing. And if the situation is of a nature that you have the state backing, then those who are really crying for cannot go anywhere. 2017 could have been the same thing. We could have cheated Amuriat. What most people don't understand is that actually Dan Mugarra, who was the chairman of the Electoral Commission of FDC, many people don't even know where he is. Dan Mugarra is the chairman of the Electoral Commission of ANT, who were together in the army. We come from the same area in Tungamo. We know each other quite closely. Had we had a thinking of trying to manipulate that electoral process, we could easily have done that. Or if we're agents of the state, even if you try and it creates chaos, in any case, that's what the regime would want, chaos. Even if you go in that, but twice, 2015, clearly, Dr. Wesley won, I put the party behind him. 2017, when I was boy one, I considered defeat. I went and handed over and also told him publicly that we are going to start a process to find out what to do in terms of how we can run two strategies which were so conflicting that they had caused paralysis in the party, which we did. After we did the tour all over the country, I called Honorable Patrick Oboy. He said, we need to meet with you and give you a report of our findings and our analysis, which we did. And we told him, you know what? We have found out that if we stay, we're going to continue fighting and the party is going to remain paralyzed. And you will not be able to build around defiance, which the delegates voted for. Nor are we going to be able to build around the strategy we believe in, those of us who believe in party building. So if we stay, we're going to keep on trying to influence the party in that direction, and these contradictions are not going to end. We're going to remain paralyzed. So we have decided to opt out. We're going to start, you build around defiance, so that you cannot even have an excuse. Because if we stayed and we don't advance, even around defiance, would easily become an excuse. Two, at a personal level, I also had discomfort, because I remember I asked these delegates that very day when they were electing, I said, do you trust me? Because there was this issue of saying Muntu is a more, Muntu is a more, Muntu is a more, he wants to weaken the party. So I asked him, I said, do you trust me? I said, today, you must determine that. And in a sense, even when there was contradiction in terms of strategy, I believe that when they voted for Honorable Muria, they were basically telling me, Muntu, you may say whatever you are saying, but basically, one, they were saying, your strategy is going to take too long, we want power now. Two, I also read in that maybe they don't trust me. So I said, anyway, why remain around and become a problem for people who don't believe in what I was doing and the colleagues that I was with? So we exit, but at the point of exit, I promised Patrick, I said, Patrick, you build around what you believe in. You now don't have any internal contradictions based on strategy. But in the moment you're able to take power, you invite us. We will come and discuss how to manage power. And of course, defense has not succeeded yet. Even those of us who are building around the party organization, grassroots up, haven't yet. So there would be no basis for contradictions or fighting each other. What I promised, we've held our own side of the bargain. We don't attack FDC, we don't undermine it, we don't provoke them since that time. So when I was saying that, look, the people who lost and they did not accept loss are the ones who are the source of instability. I was basically telling that he knew because they're the ones who are backing him. But fortunately to me, that was not the issue. The issue was that now that we're having different spaces, they could organize themselves and continue building the party around what they believed in. Unfortunately, they have got caught up in another different situation.
General, and that situation they've got caught up in too. Some people are very surprised about it, but you who used to be in the party and understand it quite well, is this something that you find surprising?
Absolutely not. Because there are things I knew then as I know now, but that I was not ready to talk about in the public. Because I knew if I said anything without evidence, because you can know something, but you don't have documented evidence, or you don't have, for example, a videotaping of something that you know, even when you are sure, because there are other means in which you get to know. So I didn't want to end up in a situation where it was going to be my word against someone else's word, and it becomes a source of instability for the party. So I knew that we had to bear out all that. I never shared it with even people, the closest people. I just keep it to myself. There are things I knew. But one also thing I knew is that when there is something that is wrong, eventually it comes out, becomes self-evident. I choose that route many, many times in my life. And I knew that there was going to be a time when what I knew was going to become self-evident.
General, is some of this information in relation to the hand of the state within FDC?
Come again?
Some of this information that you knew at that time but had no evidence of, is it information in relation to the hand of the state within FDC and resources from the state to FDC?
What I keep advising the leaders of parties to which we relate, I keep telling them that they should know that obviously the state is going to do everything humanly possible in terms of application of effort and resources and time to destabilize every opposition party which would be a threat. That's something we must know and understand. So normally what I advise them is that be very vigilant. Two, every party needs to have leaders who have the skill sets. One, to detect any threat from the outside, but also to be able to differentiate contradictions which are internal and also those which are externally generated, and also know how to neutralize them. That's the only way you can survive and remain stable in this environment. There's no other way. So being infiltrated or being targeted is something that is so obvious in the environment in which we are in. I get surprised by people who get surprised or shocked by it. You must know, never started within FDC. It was propagated and kept on being fun. Now, unfortunately, when you're in an organization where people are not skilled, it was effects. And I keep watching what's happening. We will take care of ourselves. One entity will protect ourselves. The other parties will need to protect themselves. Survive are those who have got the skill sets to neutralize anything, whether it is from within or whether it's from without, because it is not so difficult to do that. And I believe NT, by God's grace, will survive. That one I really,
All right, General, it seems like we have a network problem. I don't know if it's on your side or on mine, but at least for now, I know people can still hear us, so we will continue. Let me just ask a direct question about money, which seems to be causing quite a bit, really already making these contradictions in FDC worse. When you were party president of the FDC, were there attempts of the regime giving money to the FDC? Because this seems to be a common theme that's coming up in these contradictions, that there's money from sources not known, and yet certain leaders in FDC seem to know where this money is from, and it has been flowing into the party.
There's no money which ever came into the party without us declaring it within the party. And there were two different ways. One, the money which would come from government, electoral commission. There will also be money coming from different individuals who had been set up. There was a committee which had set up for fundraising, which had several members, maybe 5 or 6. But there would be also a key actor, the one who would know who has gone where. Because when I was in the presidency, because we had the new treasurers, when the treasurer general and the deputy resigned within, I think, the first 1 or 2 months, we put up a new team. So we designed ways of, one, knowing that the key actor would know who has gone where. if you have 5, to ensure that not 2 or 3 go to one person. So the central person would know that so-and-so has gone to person A. So nobody should go to person A. That was one way. The other way would be if someone was interested in giving us resources, but doesn't want to get to know, he could, would get information through a person, a leader of the party, who could come and say, I have got 20 million. But the person who gave this money doesn't want to be known. We wouldn't mind about that. If they wanted acknowledgement, we would write a letter to that person to whom it may concern. He or she wouldn't tell us who had given, but would give them a letter, take the person to say, we have received so much through so-and-so. The name would be put there. And then this acknowledgement, keep that letter for your own reference. In case someone wants to bring a letter in future and say, I didn't want people to know me, but I'm the one who gave this money. Only one person who he or she would trust is the one who would bring in the money. So to us at that point, we wouldn't know who, but we would ensure that we've received 20 million from John or Mary, and we declare it, and we put it to party use. So we had different methods of dealing. Those are the 2 different methods that we would apply. Now, the current issue, I don't know how FDC handles their own internal financial management processes. So it's very, very difficult for me to make, any informed comment in the current operation.
All right, but as a former leader there, could you, suggest how this can be resolved? Because FDC being the party that it is, this can have an effect on other, especially opposition parties.
The first attempt where the 2 teams put their, I don't know how they selected, for example, the membership. When my victory of 2012 was challenged, when I spoke with the chairperson, I proposed that let's have three people. I bring in 3 people. Nathan and I brings in 3 people, and then they go and look at the report, which they did. And all of them, there was a consensus all around. So nobody would have any complaint. Now, I don't know how this was formed, and I don't know how it has conducted itself. But as you notice, there seems to be still controversy, even when the report was released. So they would need to sit again and see how to resolve that through dialogue. If that fails, the second route they could resolve that is to say, okay, let's organize a transparent electoral process. Let the delegates hear our stories, and they are the ones who determine. And at that point, they determine. And if all of them are agreed to the outcomes of the electoral process, if they don't, then I think the party is going to be rocked to its core.
All right, because of time, we have to move on from this topic. But let me just ask one more thing around the role of Dr. Kizza Besigye in the party, because this is something that you spoke about when you were party president at that time. It seems to be something that is coming up quite a bit right now, even having, press conferences at the same time in Katonga Road and one, at Najana Nkumbi. In your view, what role should Dr. Besigye play in FDC and, I don't know, probably building that party?
When we formed the party in 2004, it was a merger of 3 different groups. A reform agenda, which was headed by Dr. Kizza Besigye, because he participated. At that time, there were no parties in 2001. And there were, I don't remember how many members of parliament, maybe there were about 5 or 6. Much as it was a movement system, but they were there clear, they were known to have run as a reform agenda candidates. And then there were those of us who were in PAF, Parliamentary Advocacy Forum. I was in Yala, the others who were in the National Parliament, and there were also other colleagues. So, and then there was NDF, I think, of Chapa Karanga. And then we formed the FDC. At that time, Dr. Chizabeji had been in South Africa. So when we were moving towards 2006, there was, because of considerations at that time, that he was still popular inside the country, and he was the best bet to become the candidate for FDC. I remember we went to South Africa even when we were reaching the point of consensus of how to form FDC. And he was convinced, because he had sworn by that time that he would not participate in the electoral process anymore. He was convinced, and he came back, and we ran the 2000 campaign. Unfortunately, we didn't make it, and that's how FDC started. And we had built a very firm foundation. But I also think that the problem we had then, which when we started ANT, the environment was different. One, the formation itself was such a short time. The pressures for removing the regime were so high that the focal point was the regime change, and we never considered anything else. Like the emergence of the two different strategies, we never discussed that. So it was like taken for granted. I think that we never dwelt upon so much from 2006 until even by the time I left, was concentrating on managing and organizing a party for not only regime change, but also management of power thereafter. We didn't give it attention. So it was the formation of FDC in that regard had its challenges from inception. When we are starting ANT, because of the knowing the experience we had gone through, we had the benefit of hindsight. We started right from the beginning agreeing on who we were and what we wanted to do, and around what principles, around what the organizational principles. For example, when we started ANT, we knew that we were going to build grassroots up. So that was the key strategy that would pursue. FDC had that opportunity in 2017 when Honorable Boy took over, because they voted for a strategy of defiance. Therefore, I believe that they will be building around that. The emergence of two different strategies thereafter is a bit confusing to me, so I cannot delve into it. But where they are at, they have to deal with that. And Dr. Chizabeji, having had the experience of being one of the leaders who challenged the status quo in 2001, he went through FDC the number of times he was in there. I believe from that experience, he would have to apply that experience in resolving these contradictions, because if he's not able to do that, then I have a feeling that they may easily fall apart.
All right, let's leave it there. General, there are two other themes I'd like us to handle, but let's get in a few of the questions that have come in relation to the two things we've handled, where ANT is and what's happening in FDC. The first question here, unfortunately, I don't have a name. The person asked, what strategies do you have for the young people who are seemingly resistant and slow to joining ANT? And what critical message could you leave, I believe, leave with them? There's another that's related to that, and if I could find it. I have a question that I hope will be taken seriously. General Mugisha, I have been thinking about supporting ANT, but I would like to know your vision for the party. Is this a party with an aim of creating bipartisanship, or one aim for the top seat in the state? Let me read one more that I think also goes the same direction. This one is from Dr. Mbiasingura Ronald, and he says, thank you for your efforts. The General has just talked of grassroots structures and party organization. I have not smelled anything ANT in the areas I have moved here in Western Uganda. Ibanda, Ntungamo, Isinjiro, what is happening. And General, at the beginning of this conversation, you did mention at least one or two of those areas. If you could respond to those, and then I'll bring one or two more in before we can go to another theme.
Let's start with the last one. The biggest impediment is the resources, because our plan has always been deploy 3 to 4 teams. Right now, we only have one team that moves around because of limitation of resources. But our plan would be, if we have 3, 4 teams, we'd be able to go around the country in about 15 months. Would have reached every sub-county in this country. So resource limitation is the biggest impediment. We keep at it, we're not going to give up. And
sorry, correct me if I'm wrong, and sorry for cutting in. At the beginning of the meeting, I think you mentioned that one of the districts you've been in this last month is Isinjiro, if I'm not mistaken.
For example, in Isinjiro, we did only 9 districts out of 31. Kamwenge, we did sub-counties. In Kamwenge, we only did half. In Chejegwa, we did out of, I think they have maybe 19 or so. We did only 10. We are remaining with about 8 or 9. So even when we go these districts, we don't do the whole district, again, because of limitation of resources. 2, we don't do rallies. We just go and meet people at the district level. I mean, at the sub-county level. Mostly it's around 100, 150, 200 people that we do meet. From whom, once we get to talk to them, those who buy into the party principles and agenda, we get as many or as few as we are able to get at the parish and the sub-county. So when we get about 5, 10 people at the sub-county, get 5, 10 people at the parish, then they go down and work on the villages, because the villages are too many, 70,000, the whole country, we cannot reach there. We can't even reach all parishes. That's why we coordinate efforts at the sub-county. So it is possible, you can even go into a whole district. If you are not done the whole district, many people will not know. The only thing that maybe how people would know is when we go to radios, because when we go to radios, we access and talk. But the moment you build that infrastructure, the whole purpose is that you become operational at the village, at the parish, at the sub-county. Even if you have 5, 5, 5, that's the beginning point. Then you expand on those. But also, too, the nature of people whom we want us to come. We want to come into the party are people who believe in the party agenda. People who are value-driven. Even if we don't get many of at the beginning. It's a good thing that you get people who believe in what you are doing, also who have the resilience, and then you keep training and then building around that. Now the numbers come during the election. Now someone else was talking about, are we about to the top only? No, that's why we go down, because our view has always been, don't bank on just having a strong presidential candidate and you think he or she is the vehicle that will take you to power. We think different. That's why we go down. We think if you operate at the village and the parish and the sub-county, you have the capacity to recruit good candidates for the council level 3, council level 5, mayors of trading of townships, and mayors of municipalities, and also good candidates for MPs. And then you support them using that infrastructure, and also chairs of LC3 and LC5. So that the moment you have that capacity down, it is where you can build momentum that can prepare you even to take the presidency. And it is clear, because when you see much as there have been rigging by the regime, but you see like Dr. Chiza Besje, there is a time when he would get around 40%. Recently, Honorable Chagurani got around 40%. Now imagine if that was replicated at the lower level. It means that out of 2,000 LC3s, opposition could get about 800. It means that LC5 out of 146, opposition could have about 60. And basically, and MPs can.
Parliament out of 450.
MPs, we could have about 200. Now imagine even if we are cheated at the presidential, but we had that kind of leadership at those 3 levels. Because if you have 800 LC3s who are well trained, you will impact. politics of a country.
All right, General, I hope you can still hear me. It looks like your video has frozen, and there's no telling if the issue is on my end or on yours.
I think it is his network. Let's wait a little bit and see.
All right, thanks. But I was able to hear him on the Twitter space just a bit. General, just let us know when you're back. And okay, he's even dropped off. I'd like to let Michael, at Michael256, I'd like to let you know that if you're still listening in, we will be able to get to your question. I'm reserving that question for the end because it fits quite nicely with the question I want to ask General towards the end. So Michael256, at Michael256, I haven't ignored your question. I'm reserving it for the end of this space. All right. And if you have any questions you haven't sent in yet, please send them in. Whatever platform you're using, we have teams on each of those platforms. Or I should say the Alliance has teams on each of those platforms. They will be able to ensure that we're able to see those questions. So please send them in, and I'm hopeful that the General will be joining back in a few seconds, so we can continue this discussion under the Ask Mugisha Muntu series. All right, I see that he's back on the Twitter space, but only as a listener. General, if you can hear us, if you could ask for the microphone on the space, if you could ask for the microphone, I believe the team will be able to work that out as I wait for you to join on the other platforms as well. All right, as we wait for the General to come back, if you are on Twitter, you can use this time to ask for the microphone, ask a question. We will take note of that question when General Mugisha Muntu rejoins. We will put those questions to him. So feel free to ask for the microphone. We will give you the opportunity to ask a question. We'll take note of your question and then put it to the General when he rejoins. I'm only just getting the opportunity to look at, the list of people that have joined to listen in to General Mugisha Muntu. And well, thank you very much for joining. I see some very familiar names here. I also see some high-profile people, high profile for good, and some not for very good reasons. But yes, in my books, you are a high-profile Ugandan. Thank you for joining and listening in. I will not name names, but if you could go through the list, maybe you can guess one or two of the people I could be referring to. Could the team also check with the General? If he's not able to join back on the other platforms, we can just continue this on Twitter, because I do see that one of his accounts is signed in on Twitter, but only as a listener.
kindly go ahead with Twitter Spaces.
Yes, that's what I'm doing, but I don't have General as a speaker. I only have him as a listener. So if he could, be upgraded to a speaker, then we'll be able to go on. General, if you can hear me, please ask for the microphone on Twitter Spaces, and then we'll be able to continue the conversation. If you could please send that request again. The request appeared on my screen and disappeared. Technical team, if you could help with that as well. Because the request did come through but disappeared almost immediately. All right, could we give this about 5 more minutes? If we're not able to resolve it, unfortunately, we'd have to apologize. But the team, could you just ensure that the general has the support he needs in order to get back onto this the space, especially.
It's strange why we can't see his mic active. Kindly ask him to join Zoom, then I would activate from this side.
General, please join via Zoom, and then the team will be able to activate from the Zoom platform. That's what the team has said. If you could join via Zoom, and they'll be able to activate. Being informed that for some reason on Twitter, the mic is not appearing on General's end, and so he cannot make the request to become a speaker. All right, some of the questions coming through. Thank you for all your questions. We can see them. Someone's asking why the general doesn't want to unite and stand behind Chagulanyi Sentamu Robert because many parties are useless. This is the view of Wambale Alexander. Somebody says, I have a question. I hope will be taken seriously. Oh no, I already read this one. Yeah, the people in Busoga are wondering when NT will be in Busoga. Somebody is asking what the general has got to say about World Bank. That's actually the next theme we're supposed to be going to. And I was actually just gearing up to ask a question around that before the general dropped off. So yeah. So if we can get him back on, unfortunately, we'll get, his brief. It won't be an extensive comment on the World Bank and hopefully, for, more international issues, a comment on Niger and what that means, and probably his insights being, a trained soldier. Sylvain, are we making any progress or?
We are waiting him on the Zoom. If he comes on Zoom, then we will reroute that to Twitter Spaces. You remain on where you are, and then I will reroute back. Let me give him a call.
If you could just hang on, it seems like the general is now going to be able to join. So just give us a minute or two.
Off and go back and then request for the mic. So he's been speaking all along, and he's on his side is showing active, yet on this side we are not seeing any activity.
In respect to the young people here able to respond
All right, the question around, the questions around young people, actually, there's more than one question, considering that tomorrow is International Youth Day. I think that's why we have questions, but yeah, one of the questions directly put here is, if I could find it. Yes. What strategies do you have for the young people who are seemingly resistant or slow to joining ANT? and what critical message should they or do you leave with them? And of course, somebody else asks, what is the party's agenda and program for the youth? If there is, then what exactly is that program? Please go ahead and respond to those.
Question in respect to what message do we have for those that are resistant to joining ANP or even to joining politics as young people. As NT1, we deliberate in continuous engagements, having our message clear about what we intend to do for the country, but also for the young people. So we cannot give up in giving up in speaking about what we stand for, what we have for the young people. We say the programs we have for the young people. One, there are those that are broader, there are those that are internal. We are looking at building capacity of the rising young leaders, for those who are much interested in politics, nurturing their career in leadership. It is one of the spaces and platforms with good people, with good leadership, intentionally set to ensure that young people get rightly nurtured, get well, rightly guided. And we have a series of mentorship programs internally at ZNT, so that our young leaders are robust, are well trained as far as leadership is concerned. It is not a one-day event, it is a continuous process. Young men, young people. That's one. The young people, the young leaders, again, myself, from the mouth or from the young farm in the state. The other aspect is that and then usually
All right. Okay, great. Well, thank you for those responses. All right, doesn't seem like your network is holding up either. Well, I've just received a message that the general has had a technical challenge and will not be able to join on any of the platforms. So whatever challenge he has got is affecting all the platforms that we could go through.
He's trying to join again.
Okay, let's see. Just, well, it seems like that has changed. The general has been able to join on Zoom. General, can you hear me? You're muted.
Sorry, we got shut down.
Well,
Can you
sorry
hear me?
about, yes, I can hear you. Sorry about that. And I don't know if
Yeah.
I don't know if the rest can hear, especially on Twitter Spaces, which I think is now called X
Twitter
Spaces.
is not on. Twitter shut down. Twitter, I couldn't access.
Okay. Well, General,
Channel
So I
that.
had
We'll channel that.
all right, the team is going to channel that. General, in the interest of time, let me just give you 3 things to give quick comments on. Number 1, on this letter that came from World Bank, basically stating that the World Bank will not be approving new loans from Uganda. The second is your reading into what's happening in Niger and what effect that can have on the continent and if it can have any effect back at home. And then finally, something that people are interested in, I think because tomorrow is International Youth Day, is your agenda for the young people, especially the young people. I think if you can address those 3, we will bring this to a close because also we don't want it to take much longer than we had stated, this conversation will be taking. Over to you, Jim.
what is happening in Niger is absolutely unfortunate. We had hoped to have finished the phase of Coup on this continent. West Africa looks to be quite worrying because I think Niger is the 4th or 5th coup in that region. But there seems to be a lot of interference by the former colonial powers in that region when you keep on reading what is happening. And one hopes that the Nigerian elite will work around the clock to get leaders who are going to run those countries in the national interest, use the resources for the benefit of their population, so that they can become anchors of stability in those countries. Because the whole issue is leadership. Even when there's external interference, you have to have leaders who understand the dynamics of the global environment now, and also the local challenges, and be able to build teams of leaders who are able to withstand external manipulation, and also build internal national consensus, and then they can lead their countries to a better future. There's no other way out of that. So Niger will keep watching and see what happens. One hopes it doesn't escalate beyond Niger, because I see 2 sides. There are those who are saying they are going to attack the coup leaders, and I see about 2, 3 other countries that are saying that if anybody moves in against that regime, they are going to join the fighting. Mali has talked about that. I understand that Nigeria has also sent a warning. So one hope that they'll be able to contain that. Let's keep watching. But also in this region, we need to ensure that we do things in such a way that we don't get infected by what is going on in the West Africa. For youth being those under 35 being 70% of the population, they're the majority in our party. Fortunately, there are quite a number of young, focused young men and women who participate in decision making, and that's why we are trying to build a value-driven organization that will take care of the interests of the country, take care of the interests of the citizens, take care of the interests of all forms of needs. Because the youth, it is jobs, it is a good education, it is good health system. The good thing is that once they are, those who at least who are in the party, participate in shaping the future. But even those who are not in the party, once we have a critical number of value-driven leaders of all age groups, including the youth, then they can do things that will enable sustained economic growth, put in place the necessary infrastructure in terms of road networks, rail networks, power generation, and distribution, and also going to the protection of the environment, ensure that there is food security, and then good governance. All that must be built on a good governance foundation. We are happy that we are having youth who are running around the theme or our core message of value-driven leadership. Once they are in position, I mean, those of us who in the bush, we came when we were young, we tried to move in the correct direction. Unfortunately, we were derailed. So once we have got good leadership at the top, in the middle, at the lower level, different age group, we can build a foundation on the basis of which we can basically meet all the needs of our people, including the youth and women. And World Bank, our national coordinator, the leader of the party, Honorable Salaso, is sending a letter to the World Bank seeking clarification on a number of issues. One of the observations we are making as a party is that whenever there is a freezing of loans and aid or cutbacks by lending institutions or by donor agencies, those who suffer are the vulnerable groups, the young people, the women, like in Uganda, those who are affected by HIV and those who have other health issues. Regimes or people who are in regimes are never affected because they have created a gravy trade, and even when there are cutbacks, they're not going to cut back on their luxury and on their thieving. So they will continue in the lifestyles that they have, and it's the vulnerable normally who suffer. That's always our position as Alliance for National Transformation, even in regard to all other issues which this regime has gone wrong on. So we've never encouraged cutback of resources that would be channeled into the country. Another issue which is being raised is even in view of that stance that we take as an organization, what we are not yet sure of, because we know all that information, the Western country embassies have it, the World Bank has it, they know that we are more or less in a state of a crisis because of bad governance, having a regime which they care for the principles of good governance. For example, we have an electoral process that has been so compromised that if we don't rectify that as we head towards 2026, we could get a much larger crisis that can affect the whole country. You know, the World Bank knows that. What we are not yet clear about, and one of the issues that will be raised with them to make clarity on, is why they've never taken a tough stand on any of the things that have been going wrong. And it seems they are only sparked off by an issue around the issue of LGBT, because it seems that's what they are anchoring on. We need clarity from them so that we are able to design our own responses and own stance as a party for that matter. So I believe the letter it will become a public document, and then we can, the population can clearly understand our position as an organization.
General, do you expect the World Bank to respond to your letter?
There is a country representative here. Don't know. Watch, wait. I mean, I don't know. But we're registered the opposition party. Potentially, we can become leaders in the country. So if there are people who look beyond the now, one would hope that they would have the courtesy to respond. If they don't, that's totally different matter. We keep doing our own thing as they do theirs. Maybe they only want to let those who are in power.
All right, General. We apologize for the technical glitch. We actually have gone beyond the time that we said this conversation will be running. If we could just, beg your indulgence, 2 or so more minutes for the General to give a parting shot, and then we will end for here. But I don't know if I have these powers, but I'd like to request the General that even when we are done, that people can continue asking their questions on Twitter especially, because they didn't get the chance to. And if you could respond to those questions, that will come through your Twitter handle. General, over to you on those two things, your parting shot and whether people can continue asking questions and you can interact with them on the Twitter platform in particular.
I'd like to thank you, Gabriel, for hosting me. I'd also like to thank all who have sacrificed their time to be with us on the different platforms. To apologize for the Twitter space because it got shut down. And indeed, I will endeavor to respond to questions which will be sent on Twitter. I try the best I can to respond to them. And I'd like to thank those who are listening to us, and really to encourage more and more Ugandans that we should not lose hope. This is our country. Nobody is going to salvage us. Nobody is going to come from anywhere to deal with our problems. We must keep engaging. We must not allow ourselves to get frustrated or lose hope, and continue engaging with the parties that we believe in. Those who believe in ANT would like to ask you to be active in terms of propagating the word, the message of the party. Those who are able to participate in policy formulation, they can offer their expertise. Those who are able to give resources at whatever level they are comfortable with, would also welcome them. We'll continue doing all the things which are necessary for us to shape the future to where we desire it to be, to what we desire it to be. I would like to thank you, and may the Lord of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob richly bless you.
Thank you very much, General. Thank you for the opportunity to host you. And thank you, everybody, for joining in. God bless you. Have a good day wherever you are. Bye-bye.